distinguished ladies and gentlemen, pastors, you're welcome to this evening's Networks Business Club Economic Business Summit. We will be your anchors for tonight's event. I am Tara Coco, and with me here is
Olusegun Oyetunji. Good evening, everyone, once again. We are indeed delighted to have you here today. We are honored, especially honored, that you have given out of your time to be with us today. And we acknowledge everyone here, our fathers in the Lord, our guest speakers, and everyone here as well. And we'll kick off the program immediately as we're business people, and it is 5 o'clock. So before we start today, we would like to just encourage us to network with each other according to our program here. Let us feel free to connect with one other person. And the idea of networks is for us to, interact with each other, for Christian businessmen and women to interact with each other. So let's go ahead and network with each other. Thank you.
Please endeavor to meet someone that you've not known prior to tonight. Share a card, have a quick conversation, get to know what they do, and we'll take off the events formally in a few minutes. Thank you, sirs.
Every single time spent here has been worth it. The fact that I've heard means plus one person, you know. So, and there's this adage that says a drop of water, a few drops of water makes an ocean. So you see me knowing, a whole lot of people knowing, and you could see the real impact. You could see the graphs being shown, being explained. So I would say yes, the information is reaching the level that it's supposed to reach. In as much as we've had this forum, I would have wanted more public participation in there. That's public interest participation. The political space, they should be involved. They should see what Nigeria is about. They need to see this picture. Seeing this picture, I believe, should be able to give them that insight or that tool they need to move to the next level in their governance. So in my little space, in my legal space, and taking the business network, to the next level. Of course, because when I was sitting down there, I just quickly forwarded the link that you guys need to hear this. I don't want to be the only one hearing this. So yes, the gospel will need to move to the next level, social media. Let's make the noise. Let people see. Let's create the drive for people to know the truth, of where we are, that Nigeria needs saving as a nation. Instead of just sitting down and talking and I'll say the newspaper corner people, just read the newspaper and then talk about Nigeria, then what do you do? Yes, nothing being done. Football, talking about football in the corner of your room, should have done this, should have done. But what are you doing in your own little space? That's very important.
Moving swiftly, we are going to call on a special guest to give us the opening prayer. And as you all know, the Networks Business Club is an arm of RCCG City of David, and we're indeed business people as well. So I'm going to introduce our next guest to take the opening prayer. Pastor Femi Obaweya is the pastor in charge of Lagos Province 47 and the parish pastor of RCCG Promised Land, Aja. He is also the coordinator of programs and outreach for Region 20 Apapa family of the RCCG in Nigeria. He is a member of the Chartered Insurance Institute of Nigeria with experience in insurance and safety risk management. He is also a certified K9 security consultant, a motivational speaker with local and international pedigree. He has strong passion for mentoring with emphasis on the integrity and character development. Pastor Femi is an unapologetic believer in the potential of the greatness of Nigeria. He is married to Pastor Maureen Obaweya, and their marriage is blessed with 2 children. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please welcome Pastor Femi Obaweya as he takes the opening prayer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Can we please rise even as we share a word of prayer? Eternal Rock of Ages, we want to thank you for life. Thank you, Lord, for our country, Nigeria. Thank you, Lord, for the businessmen and women here represented. Thank you for those who are on their way. We pray you grant them speed. Lord, we just want to commit our discussions here into your hands. Indeed, you are the one who teaches us to profit. You are the one who owns the silver and gold and all the resources. And we know you've blessed us in this nation. We pray, Lord God, you will find us good custodians of these resources, not only for our immediate good, but for the good of society. We commit everything we will do here into your hands, and we ask that your name be glorified. It's my privilege and honor to ask, O Lord, that you just bless this gathering. In the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you. May please be seated.
Good evening again, gentlemen, ladies, pastors. Take us further in our event today. I will be calling up very grand host of tonight's event, Pastor Idowu Iluyomade. Pastor Idowu Iluyomade trained as a lawyer at the prestigious University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, and graduated with an LLB honors degree in 1981. He was called to the Nigerian bar in 1982 and has since been in private legal practice as an advocate with interest in commercial practice, especially in the area of international trade finance, mergers and acquisitions, international joint ventures, energy law, commercial law, to mention a few. As a pastor in the Redeemed Christian Church of God, RCCG, Pastor ID, as he is fondly called, presides over the Apapa family and the Region 20 of the church, headquartered at the City of David, Trinity Towers Sanctuary. Pastor ID is also an assistant continental overseer and the intercontinental overseer on CSR worldwide. Pastor ID has authored several books on faith and continues to lead the Redeemed Christian Church of God, City of David, Trinity Towers from heights to even greater heights. Pastor ID is happily married to his wife, Sugar, Pastor Dr. Shiju Iluyomade, and they are blessed with 3 children. Distinguished audience, kindly rise as we celebrate our grand host for today's event, the wonderful Pastor Idowu Iluyomade, Pastor ID.
Praise the name of the Lord. Please be seated. Please be seated. Chair, head of my heart. Let's clap for our own chairperson, Dr. Ernest Ebi, MFR. I'd like to salute all the members of these, to call it maybe the club, amen, the Networks Club. And I bring you greetings from my sweetheart, my Azuka Betito, my sugar banana, Pastor Shiju, who is unavoidably absent. I once again welcome you to this economic summit. I want to talk about strategies for growth. A gathering of leaders of thought and captains of industries. And we need to realize that the engine that drives change is leadership. So if you want change anywhere, you talk to the leaders. Maximum and far-reaching impact is only attainable when leadership takes responsibility for initiating and making a positive difference. And I know that that's what is going to happen today. Now, I've been asked to speak for about 10 minutes, opening remarks, and my mind immediately went to the story of 4 brothers. You know, when God wants to do something great, doesn't need everybody, just need committed and focused people that he will use to turn things around. four brothers in the Bible: Tola, Hua, Jashub, and Shimron. And collectively, they are called the children of Issachar. Their names are in 1 Chronicles 7:1. And in 1 Chronicles 12:32, we are told that they understood times that, they lived in. Apparently, Israel must have been at crossroads, and they needed leadership, they needed direction. And these guys, they had a lot of influence that their brethren were at their beck and call as a result of the unique ability to discern the times in which they were living. They could decode the situation. It was their job to gather intelligence, crunch data, interrogate the indices, and make projections. And those projections were like prophecies. If they were living in our own times, we would have called them strategy consultants or analysts. Now, I see today many sons and daughters of Issachar who, through their training and experience, have experienced God, and God has given them the gift of discernment and wisdom in understanding and navigating the challenges of our times. And I'm sure that today they're poised to profile strategies because they are at the vantage point, and they would give us various perspectives, including God's perspective. Because we must never forget that there is nothing that is happening in our nation that God does not know. And I know that nothing that we have gone through or going through has caught him off guard. We thank God that he has promised us that whatever happens, he will work it out for our good. And if you follow the instructions, all of us will eat the good of the land in Jesus' mighty name. I believe, however, that there are various strategies that can be employed by our nation for growth and sustainability and economic recovery. Many of these strategies are already being implemented by our leaders and leaders of thoughts all over the world. Some might be novel that we'll hear today, but most of them are just believing that they won't just cast the vision, they will run with the vision and implement, what God has laid upon their hearts, or what through their experience and exposures will work for our nation. For example, diversification of the economy. And I know that now the country is talking and encouraging sectors beyond oil, such as agriculture, manufacturing, and technology, to reduce the dependency on oil revenues. That's a strategy. Investment in infrastructure, to develop and maintain robust infrastructure to support business activities, and most importantly, to attract foreign investment. Education and skill development. Invest in education, skills development programs to enhance the capabilities of the workforce, fostering innovation and competitiveness. Financial inclusion. Many governments are talking about financial inclusion to empower more citizens to participate in economic activities, which obviously, if done well, will stimulate growth. Corruption control. Implementation and enforcement of anti-corruption measures to create a transparent and conducive environment for people to thrive. Access to capital, to facilitate access to financing for businesses, especially the small and medium-sized enterprises, to spur a lot of entrepreneurship. Export promotion. Encourage and support exports by providing incentives and removing barriers, contributing to foreign exchange earnings. For example, I really don't understand why some areas that were banned from going to CBN for foreign exchange, they were the manner of speaking, unbanned. We thought the banning of all these sectors would improve the local manufacturers and all that. But I haven't put a ban for years. One morning we woke up and they said that all those guys could play in the same space. Well, I believe that such things will be explained to us today in Jesus' mighty name. Technology adoption, to embrace and invest in technological advancements. We need to be talking about AI. People need to understand how it applies to their sectors. Environmental sustainability. We need to implement policies that promote sustainable practices. And I think that is one of the ways that we can ensure economic growth. Also, social welfare programs. That's where I play. Develop a lot of social welfare programs to address poverty and inequality. In our mission in the last 4 years, we have spent over 61 billion naira, in various sectors as interventions in social, in health. And in the same period, we have done more than 1.6 million projects, and we use about 46,000 centers all over Nigeria. That's just a faith-based organization. So if everybody, join in, I'm sure that most of our problems would have been sorted. Also, investment in agriculture. And I remember that a while ago we had a meeting that some people were brought in from the CBN. They talked about all the subventions and the monies that you can, get if you are in that sector. More than 828 million people go to bed hungry daily in the world. Between 2019 and 2022, the number of undernourished people grew as many as 150 million. 45% of child deaths worldwide are due to hunger and related causes. It's a major area that I think we need to look at. Then, of course, we need to foster global partnerships and collaborations. But one way or the other, we're still attractive to, the big players. And I know that our story will change very soon in Jesus' mighty name. So if we implement a combination of these strategies, I believe that within a short time, there will be changes and there will be recovery, there will be sustainable for our nation in Jesus' mighty name. As a closing remark, at this juncture, I'd like to step aside so I too can benefit from the wisdom and insight and foresight to be revealed tonight by our discussants under the chairmanship of our own indefatigable Dr. Ernest Ebi MFR, all of you tagged as sons and daughters of Issachar. I wish you happy deliberations. God bless you.
Well, in everything that was shared, there was a statement that Mr. Tilewa Adebajo made, that he had pointed out, he had noted earlier on that he had worked in the United States. He was on Wall Street.
Yes.
And that one thing that used to happen then was that when conversations like these took place, or when seminars or whatever you tag them, when discussion panels like this were put together, government officials were always eager not only hear but also attend and request for papers that would emanate from such discussions. Nigeria, as we are today, we need to develop manpower. You can't begin to increase productivity without the appropriate manpower being in place. That, no pun intended, when our manpower has practically relocated, you understand? So, and then we have issues. The universities are producing graduates that cannot fit in. So where are we going? Where are we headed? We have a lot of issues, and they are quite fundamental. Until we deal with those issues, we can talk all we want about increasing productivity. We must first of all have the manpower in place.
Can we give Pastor ID another round of applause, please? Thank you very much. Okay, he said so many things, and one of the key words I picked out there was diversification. And I think Nigeria is due to really put in practical terms our diversification and policies to ensure that at least we have more than one or two sources of revenue. Also, he talked about technology. I'm particularly impressed and biased, AI. Indeed, the world has changed. We just don't know it yet. The effects will soon start coming. It has started, actually. So, and he also mentioned social welfare programs, a lot that he has done as one organization. Imagine if other organizations also, take part in this. The ripple effect will be enormous and it will be positive. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, moving on swiftly. We would like to recognize the guests, all our guests that are here today. You are all special and you're all wonderful people. Please, can you please give yourselves a wonderful round of applause? Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call on a very special guest, someone who we all know, and someone who is a leader in the Networks Business Club. But before I call him, I'm going to read out his profile briefly. I know he's a very, very, very humble man. He doesn't like us doing this, but we have to acknowledge this. Okay, and I'm talking of none other than our chairman of the Networks Business Club, Sir Dr. Pastor Ernest Abi, MFR. Sir Ernest Abi has more than 40 years of banking experience from various leading institutions in Nigeria. In June 1999, he was appointed as a deputy governor at the Central Bank of Nigeria, where he covered the policy and corporate services portfolios over a 10-year period. He was a key member of the banking sector reform team, especially during the major consolidation process in 2006. In recognition of his sound professional background and track record of meritorious service, the federal government of Nigeria in 2007 awarded him the national honor of Member of the Order of the Federal Republic, MFR. He sits on the boards of several blue-chip companies, and Sir Ernest Abi was also appointed as an independent non-executive director of Dangote Cement PLC in 2014, as an independent non-executive director of Julius Berger, and he sits on the board of many other companies as well. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the Networks Business Club, can we all please, with all due respect and honor, rise to welcome our chairman, Sir Ernest Abi. Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Diego, thank you for the. I must recognize Oyomadi for all the great work and the support that they have consistently given to the Met Club, Networks Business Club. I also want to recognize the pastorate. Yeah. Good evening to all of you. And indeed, Friday has already given the keynote address. So there's little or nothing left for me to say than to join him to very warmly welcome everyone to this. To very warmly welcome you all to this summit that is being organized by Networks Business Club. The theme of the conference, as you all know, is economic recovery, strategies for growth and sustainability, the way forward. You will all agree with me that this topic is very apt. As our nation, Nigeria, at a crossroad and in dire need of solutions to address some of the challenges that is facing the country today. And the new administration at inception took some bold measures of removing the fuel subsidy and unifying the exchange rate, which we all know, from my own point of view, as a former deputy governor of Central Bank, I would say that it's a welcome development. A welcome development. Probably implementation has not gone very well, maybe because of sequencing or whatever. But I would stay away from making any comments or calls this evening because already we have the people who will do that for us. So having said that, however, Nigeria's economic recovery strategies will take a more holistic approach, which is what Pastor ID alluded to, addressing short-term challenges while building a foundation for very long-term sustainability through the points that he raised. One is productivity, which we all know we have to migrate from consumption to production. We have to, okay? You mentioned diversification. I'm not going to go into that. Touched on infrastructure. It's as if we sat down to, put together our thoughts. And more importantly, human capital development, very important, and responsible fiscal policies. So, I don't want to preempt the keynote speaker and the distinguished panelists on what they are going to say, because each of these imperatives or initiatives could take us a whole day to discuss on the way to go about it. And I believe that they will do justice to that when they come on stage. So, to actually, like I said, I don't want to preempt them, so I'll keep away from. Pastor ID also did a great job in dealing with the issues around how to go about it in a way, and thank you for that. So to actually do justice to this topic, the Networks Business Club, they meticulously assemble some brilliant minds, very brilliant minds, to lead us in this discussion. The keynote speaker is no other than my good friend, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo, whom we all know, and I believe that the MCs will introduce them more appropriately to save time. And also, the distinguished panelists, as you all know, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. I know we all see him on our rise discussing these issues. Tilewa, the same thing. So they are very at home. They are at home with the subject, and we're going to have a great time listening to them. Mrs. Shola David Bora, who I believe is online, and Dr. Mrs. Chinyere Alumna. So I want to thank them for accepting our invitation to speak at this event. We deeply appreciate. Now, before I end this brief address, because I have, 10 minutes, we need to go into the real stuff. I just want to tell us a little bit about Network Business Club. Who are we, Network Business Club? So this is Network Business Club, it's a business club in City of David Parish of Redeemed Christian Church of God. And the mission of this club is to empower Christian men and women to exercise dominion in the marketplace and advance the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ through exemplary conduct in business. And this is in complete and absolute sense of Genesis 1:28, which I will just paraphrase. It says that, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish, the sea, etc. So that's the mission and the vision of the Network Business Club. So we organize events like this, from time to time to share experiences, also to educate and give our members ideas on how to occupy and dominate. So, for some time now, we've not had a physical event. It's always been we've been having virtually, we call it experience experience sharing. And this is the first one, if I'm not mistaken, we're having since COVID, since the COVID. So I want to welcome all of you to it. And for those of you who are not yet members, I want to encourage you to register with us and be part of what God is using the Networks Business Club to do in Redeemed Christian Church of God, City of David Parish. And also, permit me to thank Pastor Heidi for the massive support you have consistently given, like I said before, to this club. And please don't grow weary. So on this note, I want to thank every one of you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentations from our distinguished speaker and panelists. Thank you for listening, and God bless. Well, I think the summit, the presentation or the discussion was quite comprehensive. They covered all the bases, and the only regret is that we don't have people here from government who would have been listening to this engagement live. But all said and done, we should try and produce the communique from this and find a way to share it with the government. And also not just drop it, but follow up. Because we really, what this country needs, amongst other things, most importantly, is leadership. When you have a leadership that is visionary, that is deliberate, like they have in Rwanda, you have a massive transformation in Nigeria. Massive, okay? And this is what we pray, because you can canvass whatever you like, say, but if you don't have a leader who is going to say, look, I will lead from the front, I will drive it, you are wasting your time. Number two is what I call a lead bargain. We need to cure this elite bargain in Nigeria, because Nigerians, you see, the elites in China, it got to a point. The elite said enough is enough. So they got together and said, look, we need to get it right. And that's how China's transformation started. And other countries. So that is very important that we also, from the private sector, when they say private sector led, it's all encompassing. That elite bargain is is something that we need to get together to talk about how we want things to move forward. Okay? Among other things said, productivity of the economy, diversification, infrastructure, fiscal discipline. All these things can only happen if we have a leader who is committed, a leader who is visionary, a leader who is deliberate. And then we'll start rebuilding our institutions that have been damaged.
Ladies and gentlemen, that time we've been waiting for. I'm about to invite forward this evening to take us further in this conversation on the economic recovery for our great nation by the grace of God. We have in our midst tonight Mr. Tilewa Adebajo, and I would like to read out his profile as we invite him to come and give us the keynote address. Mr. Tilewa Adebajo is an entrepreneurial, transactional business manager with over 35 years experience gained in the corporate, public, and academic sectors. His core areas of competence are business management, corporate finance, investment banking, and economics. Mr. Tilewa Adebajo benefited from his initial background as a business and financial analyst whilst developing his banking career. After his earlier experience on Wall Street, the last 20 years have been focused on the emerging markets, involved in corporate finance, financial management, academia, economic policy advocacy, financial advisory, project finance, and consulting. Transactions he has executed have cut across infrastructure, aviation, agribusiness, real estate, telecoms, oil and gas, power, hospitality, manufacturing, I think you can clap, public sector, concessions, and privatization advisory. Mr. Tilewa Adebajo also has executive board level corporate governance experience with capacity to originate, implement, and manage transaction execution with transaction experience, from the United States, Europe, Asia, South America, and across Africa. Mr. Tilewa Adebajo is a much sought after media pundit on African financial markets, economy, policy, and business. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, with a resounding applause, join me, make welcome our keynote speaker for tonight's Economic Recovery Strategy session, the Network Business Clubs, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. For me, this is a homecoming. When I got this invitation from my Egmo, Ernest Ebi, while I was still in diapers, my Egmo already was established in IMB. And they were the trailblazers, and they were our role models for coming back to Nigeria. We heard about them. And talking about coming back to Nigeria, and I also heard that a very incredible gentleman that I've known for a very long time, the performer, a networker, a deliverer. So that's none other than our host, Pastor Idowu Iluyomade. We've come a long way. When I first came back to Nigeria, we were at Roxy Cinema in Apapa. From there, we moved to Eric Moore, and then we now set up this small, cute church called King's Court. And this is actually where this networking started. I can still see a lot of old faces from King's Court here. And I'm happy that Pastor Ide has not only developed this whole networking criteria, because he's absolutely blessed in this regard. We've worked on the King's Court project, and you can see now with Trinity Towers, apart from stopping there, he's moving on to another apartment project there. So this man has been blessed, and not only has he been blessed, but I think it's a good time to thank you for all the support over the years and for everything that we've done in King's Court. Because we can see that you are truly blessed. And the blessing that God has given you, you share it. And I think that is your biggest strength. So it was a no-brainer for me to be coming here, caught in between my Egmo and my pastor. So having said that, I also want to recognize the panelists and my very good friend here. We always meet on virtually because he's on another side. I'm on another side of a studio. So most people, but it's good, and I'm very happy that he's here with us today. Also, I want to recognize Mrs. Shola David Bora, also a fantastic transactional lady. She's also been very supportive over the years. If you take a look at Radisson Blu Hotel, at the time when that project was non-existent and it was at the back of the envelope, she was extremely supportive in leading the financing to make that project a reality today. I thank her for that. So she's now left transactions, and she's now a super boardroom guru and moving from boards across Africa to Europe. And I'm also quite appreciative. And of course, I think we have the DG from the Lagos Chamber of Commerce with us too here. So, because like I said, coming down memory lane, and how we've started and how this networking we used to do in King's Court has become an institution within City of David, for me, is not an issue. It is something that is a natural progression if you know Pastor ID well. Having said that, I think we're all passionate about the Nigerian economy. And, I came back to this country some years back. I was working on Wall Street with JP Morgan Chase. And the decision to come to Nigeria was a very complicated one because my mom never wanted me to come back here. It took a while, but I think having looked at that, we begin to talk about Nigeria and what Nigeria has to offer. Is this very clear? So when we talk about Nigeria, I have a firm belief in the potential of the Nigerian economy. I don't have any doubts about what Nigeria is and what Nigeria is all about. Our biggest challenge in Nigeria has been the managers and the leadership of our economy. There is no reason why our economy should not be $1 trillion plus. India is $3 trillion economy. Nigeria is not. Nigeria was close to 700 billion economy. We're going towards 3 billion, but in the last 8 years, we have destroyed ourselves. So you need to understand what kind of intervention. But I'm going to go through this whole thing. I'm going to go through a lot of charts, and then to be able to explain exactly where we are, how things are moving. There are things we already know, but it's to be able to show you how we reach the conclusions that we reach. So, first of all, Nigerian economy. We shouldn't forget, Nigeria is an agrarian economy. 24 to 25%, between 23 to 25% of our GDP is agriculture. Oil and gas, which we all talk about, is less than 10%, maybe 8%, 8.5 to 9%. So, but it's just that oil and gas generates 90% of our foreign exchange earnings. Manufacturing, 9%, construction, transport, telecommunications, electricity. Financial institutions, 2%, real estate, 7%. Entertainment and media is what is coming up right now. But what is more important about our economy, as Pastor ID mentioned about financial inclusion, is that Nigeria is a dual economy. 50% of our GDP, of our economy, comes from the informal sector. Informal sector consists of over 25 million SMEs that are not documented, but are contributing 50% of the GDP, and we will have the other GDP of 50%. The Nigerian Stock Exchange does not have 150 companies listed on it. So it's a very small exchange comparably. And it's a very liquid exchange because the average traded volume is also quite low. So that is the structure of our economy. 50-50, 50 formal, 50 informal. Can we have the next slide, please? So where are we now in our economy in Nigeria today, very quickly? There's significant challenges on the fiscal side. Debt management has gone out of control. The debt profile has gone from about 63 billion to well over 200 billion. That's if you include the ways and means, which is currently 30 trillion. Since this administration came in, they've drawn down 4 trillion in ways and means. NNPC has not remitted funds into traditional account last year, despite $100 barrel. The last 7 years, deficit financing. Then the current 2023 budget expenditure, 21 billion revenue. The current 2023 budget expenditure is about 21.8 trillion. The revenue is only 10 trillion, but from what they've told us, they've only been able to raise 60% of that revenue, and we have a deficit of close to 15 trillion, and they just passed a supplementary budget in November of 2 trillion, which they will spend in the next 2 months. So we're spending money that we're not making. So our deficit levels have gone through the roof. We've had a lack of coordination and the presidential leadership with economic policies because of a lot of the false starts, but now they're beginning to get their act together, misalignments. Monetary policy has also been inconsistent because it's not focused on economic growth. And economic growth is important because Nigeria has a population of 200 million people. And our population is growing at 3% per annum, 3.5. So if your economy is only growing at 2.5%, you're not in line with your economic growth, and that's a deficit for you. So for Nigeria, we need to be growing at about between 8.5 to 10% on a yearly basis. And what's going to happen? High interest rates. We need to curb inflation. We're talking about the foreign exchange regime now is in transition. They're trying to go through a market regime. And I'll show you the numbers of the foreign exchange because when you talk about these things, it's always good because I want to give you a graphical representation of each line. Next slide, please. So last year, we spent about $10 to $15 billion on the fuel subsidy. Foreign direct investment is an all-time low, less than $1 billion. Power transmission and distribution infrastructure is still very poor. We've talked about macroeconomic situation has declined over the last 7 years. We have lost between 180 billion to 200 billion of our GDP. Our GDP is currently 390 billion. We've talked about the sustainability. 135 million Nigerians in poverty trap, 40% unemployment. Dwindling reserves, as we can see from the CBN report, our reserves are probably only 3 billion right now. Violence and insecurity still prevalent. Election results have been contested and won. But on a brighter note, Nigeria is still attracting the largest amount of startup capital in Africa. So with significant infrastructure deficit and growth challenges, Nigeria is set to become the number 3 largest economy in Africa, below South Africa and Egypt. So we're going to lose our status as the largest economy in Africa for the first time in 40 years or 50 years. Next slide, please. So we talked about our GDP. Like I said, in 2014, our GDP was 574. We've dropped down now. 2022 is now 390. So we've lost about 180 billion of our GDP. If we had put 180 billion onto the 570, we'll be getting close to 600, 700. So that is the impact of our loss in GDP. So that's the loss of output. Next slide, please. This is our GDP growth rate, as you can see. 2012, we're growing close to 6%. You can see 2016 recession, 2020 recession, negative growth. We're now down to 2% growth, 2022, 3%. So this is the problem with Nigeria now. We're not growing our economy fast enough. Next slide, please. Our fiscal expenditure. You can see the charts. This is what we're spending, and this is what government is making. So let's see the next slide, please. So you can see the Nigerian expenditures and the revenues. So you can see here that in 2016, for instance, we were struggling to keep spending in check because our expenditure was higher than a lot of our revenues. So you can see that constant cycle of trying to match our revenues and our expenditures and funding that. Next slide, please. As you can see now, this is Nigerian imports and exports. Same thing again. You can see earlier we were doing very well with our exports, but again, you can see 2016 exports at an all-time low. Next slide, please. Again, exports. See what's happening with exports. From 1984, you saw things were quite okay. 2000, things were quite okay. Then all of a sudden, things just started going haywire. We couldn't balance. So right now, we're having all these challenges, as you can see. We're importing, and we're not exporting enough, and we're also importing petroleum products. Next slide. What do we export? Our total exports as of 2021 is 45.98 billion. Europe, 18 billion. Asia, 15 billion. America, 6 billion. Africa, 6, you can see what we're doing, 6 billion, which is only 13%. So you can see that intra-Africa trade that we're talking about is a reality because we're not doing much on our continent. Everything is going to Europe and Asia. Next slide, please. Where are export destinations? Surprise, surprise. India is our largest export destination. They're the biggest buyer of our crude oil right now. Spain, France, Netherlands, Italy, China, 4%, South Africa, 3.4%. And then what are we exporting? Next slide, please. 89% of our exports are mineral fuels, oils, and distilled products. That's including gas. So you can see that everything else is 3%, 2%, 1%. So that is the dilemma of when you talk about diversifying exports in Nigeria. So we don't have foreign exchange. If we're not selling oil, we can't get foreign exchange. So you can understand that this is a next one. Next slide, please. What are we importing? We're importing from Europe, 40%, 46% from Asia. This is where we get everything from. Americas, 10%, and Africa, we're only importing 2% from the rest of Africa. So Europe, we're importing 20 billion a year from Europe, 24 billion from Asia, 5.25 billion from Americas, and only 1.3 billion from Africa. Our total imports, 51.51 billion. Next slide, please. Where are we importing from? China. 25% of our imports are coming from China. The Netherlands, petroleum products. Belgium, petroleum products. United States, India also. Russia, grain. South Korea, Norway, stockfish. Germany, France, Brazil, Italy, Malaysia. So you can see where we're spending all our imports from. Next slide, please. What are we importing? Again, we're importing petroleum products. So we're exporting oil and importing petroleum products. What do? Machinery, vehicles, electrical, cereals, plastics, pharmaceutical products. So you can see, next slide, please. So basically, you can see the challenges we've had with import and export and what we're doing. What about foreign direct investments? Look at where our foreign direct investments are. Less than 1 billion. By 2023 now, it's going to negative territory. So we're not even attracting any investments anymore. Next slide, please. US dollars. This is really where I want to talk about and focus on. In 2000, between 2000 and 2016, that was 16 years, the exchange rate was at a very stable rate in this country. It moved from 100 naira to 1, and it wasn't until 2016 or 2017 that it crept up to 200 naira from $100. By 2016, you can see it went up to 300 naira. It was stable for 4 years up until 2020. 2020 was what? 3 years ago. So look at what happened to us from 2020. So from 2000 to 2020, we went from 100 to 300. So from 2020, in 3 years, we've gotten to 800. This is a fundamental disaster. How are we still standing? What happened? What happened? We're all victims. What happened? These are the dates. These are the times. 3 years ago, we were at 300. Today, we're at 800. But in 16 years, we held it. So these are the challenges that we have. All these slides are available for everybody, and I think they'll send them out once we finish. So look at what happened with Naira dollar. How did this happen? We'll talk about it some more. But these are the visual effects that I'm trying to show you to understand the reality of these problems that we tend to think that because for me, it's like it doesn't happen anywhere. So guess what I did with the next slide? I looked at the British pound and the US dollar from 2000 to 2024. What's the variation? It went only from 2 to 1 to 1 to 1. $1 to 1 pound or $2 to 1 pound. It didn't go past it in 20 years. If I do a 50-year analysis, this is the acceptable spread in devaluation. These are two important countries. In 2000, you could see that a pound was exchanging for 1.6. By 2008, it went to about 2. That was a financial crisis. They announced Brexit in 2016. They started Brexit in 2020. It impacted their currency. They're down to 1.2. Our own has gone from 100 to 800. From 200 to 800 in 3 years. And we are still standing. We did not revolt. We did not cause a revolution. This cannot. What happened in Nigeria cannot happen anywhere in the world. It's impossible. So that shows you that our foreign exchange market is completely distorted and extremely speculative. There's no method to it. Next slide, please. Crude oil production. 1977, we hit 2.5 million barrels a day. 2009, we hit 2.5 million barrels again. Since then, we've gone downhill. Right now, we're at about 1 million barrels. We're not investing in our oil industry. Since the beginning of the history of Nigeria, we've not been able to cross 2.5 million barrels in oil production. So we're not investing in the goose that lays the golden egg. Next slide. Our crude oil production, you can see from 1980, you can see what it is now, 2020, we're down to 1 million barrels. 1977, I think I was just in secondary school then. Next slide, please. Okay, what's the correlation between Nigerian crude oil production and our foreign reserves? Quite clear. The more oil we have, the better our reserves are. But guess what happens? A lot of distortions start to creep into it. Because if you take a look at the crude oil production at 2.5 billion barrels, you are seeing our reserves. Reserves at one point in time got as high as close to 2005. Guess what? $80 billion. In 2009, Yaradua was sitting on excess crude account of $18 billion. So during the global financial crisis of 2009, Nigeria was able to cruise through that problem because we had a buffer. But guess what? I'll tell you about two governors. So Fashola and Amechi went to court saying that they must share that money to the states. But as the good Lord would have it, they now became governors in the last 8 years, and they did not have money to execute their projects, and they were complaining. And I gave them a reminder that you are the people that says we mustn't save for a rainy day, that they must share all the excess crude money. Today, our excess crude account is $100,000. But we had it as high as $17 billion. And our reserves at a point in time in 2005 was $80 billion. By the time we got to 2010, reserves were close to $60 billion. Today, the reserves is $3 billion. Reality. Officially, they say it's 25-30, but in reality, maybe it's $5 billion. Next slide, please. Crude oil prices and foreign reserves. Again, you can see that they should match, but you can see now where we are. Then you could see that the crude oil price, we had, you saw the level of our foreign reserves down in 28 when it was this high. You can see it there, and you can see it's where we are right now. There should be a direct correlation between the crude oil prices and our foreign reserves. Because as the crude oil prices are higher, our reserves should be higher. I guess it makes sense, doesn't it? But then the NNPC has not remitted money into the Federation account, and we are not saying anything. Next slide, please. So these are all the issues. Inflation. This is the biggest killer in Nigeria. You can see at a point in time, inflation was 10%. It's dropped down in 2000. 2005 is packed. So in 2006, inflation was about 26%. So now we have gone back to inflation at 26%, which was at, we last experienced that in 2005, which is close to a 20-year high of inflation. So we've gone back to where we were before at that point in time. So you can see that we manage it, we bring it down, it goes back up again. See what happened here. 2015, we dropped inflation to under 10%. Then between 2015, 2020, it went up, it came down again. Then by 2020, remember the foreign exchange? Okay. Guess what happened? That was when they did the printing of money. And the printing of money went from like 1 trillion to 25 trillion, now to 30 trillion. So when you push all that money out into the system, it blows off your exchange rate. So if you're asking why your exchange rate went up, you go ways and means, you blow it up, and that's that point. But if you look at that point in time, there's the same point where the foreign exchange went up. You can see how inflation went up at that point in time. So you can see the impact of that devaluation, and you can see it. So we correlate these trends, okay? And that's how you can see why inflation has spiked up again. Because they pushed that money into the system, it has changed foreign exchange, it has created inflation, and it's there. And they keep telling you as if we don't know what is going on. But we know what they're doing. But when you tell them, they will say so. But the numbers don't lie. Next slide, please. So I now tracked inflation against interest rates. Because in reality, nobody wants to make an investment that is going to lose on. You want to be able to make sure your investment is higher than the rate of inflation. Because if you don't have that, then your real interest rates or your real yields must be positive. If it's not, then what do? You look for another store of value. And that store of value is foreign exchange. When treasury bills were yielding 18%, people were investing in treasury bills. So there's disintermediation. The stock market is not what it used to be. So people are not going there. So the bond market is not good. How much is the bank giving you in deposits or your savings? It's higher than the rate of inflation, even today. So what do? You put your money, buy dollars, and put it in the DOM account. So all throughout this period between 2008 to 2016, you can see that real interest rates were negative in 2016. So at a point in time, you can begin to see the inflation rate and the interest rates. And you can see that there are many gaps in the point in time where it's not positive. So all these are also impacting exchange rates. Next slide, please. So if we take a look at it now, 2020, you can see that inflation rate is about 23% or 26%. Interest rate is only 18% at that point in time. The yields are negative. So you can see from this point in time, which is the inflation rate is the one in blue. So you can see that the blue line is constantly always higher than the black line. So that means that we're creating negative value. So people don't want to invest in the economy because of negative value. Next slide, please. Inflation and GDP growth rates. This is very important because you cannot grow an economy in an area of high inflation. In 2008, you can see the slide, the inflation numbers. GDP was 6%, inflation was at 6%. On the other extreme, you can see inflation is at 25%, our GDP growth rate is at 2%. So there is a correlation. There's a direct correlation between GDP growth and interest and inflation rates. At a high level of interest rates, there's no way we're going to grow this economy. But Nigerian economy is quite inflation tolerant because you see that at a point in time, up to interest rates of about, if you look at this GDP growth rates, when we did 2011, when we did about 8.5%, inflation was 11%. So at 11% inflation, it's still possible to grow this economy as high as 8%. So all they need to do is to take inflation to 11%. We will see significant growth in Nigeria. Again, this is something that they are not doing. You mentioned AI. A lot of all these analyses that I'm doing are AI generated and aided. I use a tool called Trading Economics. I key in the criteria of Nigeria and it will give you economic models that you can model and forecast. Because all these things we're saying, these are the numbers. They're happening. So right now, this is what we did when you grew your economy at 8%. This is where inflation was. So they're telling you that if your inflation is at 22, this is what the result you are going to get. You are not going to grow the economy. Next slide, please. So again, inflation with GDP growth rates. We're starting this from 2024. You can see inflation rate now in blue, and then you can see the GDP growth rate, the one in black now. And again, you see where we are. It's also the same thing. At a point in time where inflation is low, less than 10%, GDP is high. So clear correlation, and AI picks this up very easily. Next slide. Credit to the private sector. This is a positive. So right now, we have about close to 60 trillion naira that credit the banks have given to the private sector. And you can see how it has doubled. So you can see the impact of inflation here. From 2021, you can see we're at about 30 trillion. So between 2021 and 2023, we have doubled credit to the private sector. Where is all this money coming from? So you can begin to understand the money that is even being borrowed in banks is also going towards chasing foreign exchange. Next slide, please. Money supply. So this is the effect of the withdrawal of the Naira that the central bank, former central bank governor did. There was about 3.7 trillion Naira worth of money outside the banking system that the CBN did not have control over. So CBN said, like, we have about 3.7 trillion outside the banking system that we don't have control over, and we don't know what's happening to that money. So they decided to do the currency change. But don't forget, in the beginning, I told you that Nigeria is a dual economy. The informal sector, which is not banked without financial inclusion, they're not interested in your banks. They want their cash. So, and they contribute towards 50% of the GDP. So you suck money out of those guys, you're going to stunt your economic growth because they need that cash to be able to do that. So you can see the impact by reducing that to 1.5 trillion. See what happens by April 2023. They begin to restore the money. So by now, they're beginning to pump that money back into the system. But it's taking a whole year, the impact of that withdrawal to come through. So think about what that has done to the informal sector. They haven't recovered to the optimal levels of 3.7 that was in the system there. So this is the impact of money supply that we're seeing, which is M0. Total money supply in Nigeria is about 45 million, 50 million, according to the central bank. That's M1, M2, M3, but that's technical. I just do this to explain the issue of cash withdrawal and the impact and the numbers there. So it needs to go back to 3.7. Next slide, please. Okay. This is why banks are smiling and are still afloat. Banks, Nigerian banks have a lending deposit rate to spread at the highest in the world. So the banks give you 2-3% interest, and they lend at 30%, and then they charge you for everything, all the transfers and everything. So that's why banks in Nigeria are smiling. I just wanted to bring this in. So if you look at G20, you can see their own is 5%, BRICS 10%, frontier markets, and see Nigeria, their loan lending deposit rate spread. So that's why the Nigerian banks are smiling. Nigerian banks half year are at 1 trillion naira. So some banks this year will cross 2 trillion naira in profits. They've revalued their books and everything, and then, so that's it. So there's still some things going on. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Now, I want to focus on some turning points because I want to try and finish right on time so that we can get everybody else involved and we can answer your questions. Now, having understood those graphical things, so what we do is we take all these numbers, we put them in an economic model, and we run the projections. And we now look at AI-generated information to say what will happen. And it's very clear that if this government continues a lot of what they're doing, we're not going to go anywhere. We're not going to go anywhere. But Nigerian businessmen are very adept. They're very adept. And we're always trying to, instead of trying to force the system to stabilize for us, we also find our ways around it. That's what we do in Nigeria because you need to survive. But 130 million of us are in multidimensional poverty. those social issues are beginning to creep up. If you go out there, I'm sure from the church, you'll understand the needs. Especially, I know the feeding program that we all used to do. And I'm sure the demand on those programs now must be incredible. Because even drivers, from COVID, we started giving all our domestic staff. And now it's just like a norm. Because if you don't do it, because of the transport costs, they all have to be accommodated because you can't cope. It's not possible. They can't, there's no driver that can be coming from home to work every day anymore. It won't balance. Except you increase his salary to cover the cost of transport, which is what we've had to do to some people. So, we need a realignment of fiscal, monetary, and trade policies. We need to address the institutional weakness in the central bank, Ministry of Finance. Because this situation, I'm sorry to say, that you've seen with the foreign exchange devaluation is self-inflicted. Okay? I know my big brother here used to be in the central bank, but at the time you were in the central bank, you cannot sit down in the central bank and violate a CBN Act. Section 38 of the CBN Act is very clear on financing to government. It says that the government cannot borrow more than 5% of his revenue projections in 1 year. And if it borrows that money, it has to pay it back that year. Or if it doesn't pay it back that year, it cannot borrow anymore. So at the worst, the limit that the government should have borrowed from the central bank was 1 trillion naira. Maybe at the let's be liberal, 1 trillion naira. Guess what? The central bank governor and his board and management went over that limit 30 times. So by the time they were going, an overdraft that was supposed to be 1 trillion became 30 trillion. So you now wonder why exchange rates went from 300 to 800. Why? There's also the Fiscal Responsibility Act that guides the government. Financial circuit breakers. You ignore all of them. You ignore all the fundamentals, and for the last 8 years, we all sat down and we were managing. So there's also need for the presidential leadership and political will. We need to improve the international perception of Nigeria. Our credit ratings now are junk bond status, non-investment grade. We need to restore compliance with the CBN Acts and the Financial Responsibility Acts. Then we need to coordinate this economy properly. There's a need for emphasis on infrastructure development. Meritocracy is very important now. We need to focus on GDP growth because it is only by growing our economy that we can take our people out of poverty and create employment. Current GDP potential of Nigeria, I've said this, is 1 trillion. But right now, our GDP is down to 390. So it's like building a factory that has a capacity to generate 1 trillion. But because of your inefficiencies, you're only making output of 390. So you have capacity utilization issues. And that is a leadership problem. Urgent and structural policy reforms required. What are my concerns? My concerns are the 30 trillion ways and means financing. If we don't resolve that, we're going to be in a lot of more trouble. We have 200 million population. Is our population a liability or an asset? A population becomes a liability when our economy is not growing faster than our rate of population growth. Because a healthy population of 200 million people that have spending power or have purchasing power becomes a population that can stimulate economic growth because they are buying goods. So if your population is not doing that, then we're in trouble. That's why with Western economies, they always try to create stimulus for their people to go out to spend. Let them go to the shopping malls. Let them go out. Let them take holidays. That's how you... Nigeria, it doesn't happen that way. Our growth is not population or purchasing power driven. Low purchasing power, and we have sachet economy. I saw something this week. Hennessy, VSOP, It's now selling in sachet. Chelsea Dry Gin has been selling sachet for a long time. But Hennessy was snubbing them. Now they've gone down market. Chivita too, now they are having smaller packs because the big Tetra Pak lines they are using is no longer cost effective. The economy is a sachet economy. It's a sachet economy. And that is the reality that is sinking in when top brands are moving because they know that that is what will sell their products. So that's the reality. Then the medium-term economic projections, we have to be very careful. In another year, debt service is going to be more than recurrent expenditure. So we're going to have debt service of 11 trillion and maybe recurrent expenditure of only 8 or 9 trillion. So you know what that means? We're heading or we are close to insolvency. So it's important that we understand what these issues are. It's understand as business people also that we also find out how we're going to mitigate those risks. So what I've done, in times of not wanting to talk too much because I want to end here, I've also done something which I've said there's economic recovery strategies. So the strategies for growth, sustainability, and the way forward for Nigeria, I've done an AI modeling and I've come up with that. And I've printed it out. So please, you have that document. I'd like you to circulate that document to everybody. And then you see that that is where I've given an explanation of what we need to do to get the economy right. Because as far as I'm concerned, next slide, please. As far as I'm concerned, the next one, please. These are the growth drivers. Next slide. We need to stay the course. It's not rocket science. A 1.5-year project, but we need to have the commitment to do it. And we have to understand that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. But if we sit back and get things right and put everything together, follow the laws, the potential of the 1 trillion Nigeria GDP is definitely a reality. Thank you very much.
I mean, some of the things that I've come across speak to the size of our nation. What, 200 million plus it? It's a large population. You know, so for me, I'm sitting there and I'm listening. Okay, so what services do I provide? What products do I provide? We've spoken about some of the matrices that are not particularly friendly. I mean, at times I use the phrase that we're in a hostile environment. And the hostility is, so for you that import, hostility is living from everywhere. You know, you're dealing with your suppliers. Are you going to get foreign exchange? What are the rates going to be? A few months ago, in May, 740 at the parallel market. 2-3 weeks ago, it hit at 1,300. It's down to about 1,100. So what do? So you try and bring the product. The whole supply chain process is challenging. You know, your stuff gets here. You're dealing with the fellows at the customs. You bring in your product. You've got a price. You're selling on credit. You have customers that are not particularly faithful when you extend credit to them. And then at times you're dealing with internal issues. You know, there's shrinkage, you're dealing with, and it just goes on. And then, of course, you have to deal with the tax guys. So it can be very challenging. But I think it was Mr. Adewaju that alluded to the challenges that you just have. But you've just learned. And, you know, for us that are Christians, we have understanding. So John 16:33 says, this is what you have to be, shall be of good cheer, overcome. Amplified says, I've deprived the word of power to harm you. Proverbs 24:10, if you're faint in the day of adversity. And these are things that are not theology.
So it's not if the day of adversity comes, it's a matter of when.
So it's not theology. Yeah. So I can tell you and I can give you a whole slew along the journey, doing this for close to 30 years, the things that we've had to contend with. You know, so listening, you know, to these guys, I hear a lot of But you've just got to figure it out for yourself. That's what it is, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. So when you need to innovate, you had better. When you need to permit, your offerings evolve. When your business model has to change. Those are the things that...
And possibly scale back sometimes.
Well,
so that's the conversation a lot of entrepreneurs don't like to have.
Well, not necessarily scale back. No, you adapt, So if I have a client base, a customer base, and this is what I'm offering them, that same customer, what else can I offer them? What additional lines, what additional offerings do I need to bring? You have to be dynamic. I mean, we sell those books, Innovate or Die. So, yes. I mean, we just understand these things. And we sell a lot of those books. And you've just got to understand the trends that are taking place. So reference is made to AI. So for us, AI, interesting. Now, you're knowledge disseminators. So what is current knowledge? What's current thought that people need to? It's your assignment to make sure that's available to them. So your assignment is, hey, what is trending? What do people need?
How can you get that into their hands
available.
And get something out
Yeah, and so for us, when we started selling, it was Christian books, Bibles. I was led when I was in Bible school to go into that. So it was, our payoff line was serving you, serving him, Christian product. Then when we started doing business titles, it became light up your world. So you are reading, and we have a caricature. You read, I think it was, gentleman said, you can't move within and stand still on the outside. Yeah, so, that's where we, and then, things have evolved. I mean, there's piracy in the book business, there are ebooks and all of that. Yeah, so what do you do now? So we've brought on, lifestyle products. So we do home fragrances and all manner of things. We were essentially distributors, so our channels were bookstores. The bookstores shut down. No, they shut down now. So worldwide, it was a worldwide phenomenon. Borders shut down, Barnes & Noble strong. So we've had to evolve. So our outlets are not just bookstores now, even supermarkets. And then what do the supermarkets want? We have learned what they want. And we have made those products available. And you don't have a choice. And then you're challenging your operations all the time. How can I improve? How can I satisfy my customers better? How can I maintain the level of product or improve on the level of product? You just got to do that. You have to do that.
We're moving into the panel session where we're going to be discussing economic recovery strategies for growth. And I'm going to start by introducing our very first panelist, Mrs. Shola David Bora, who is joining us online. I'll be reading her profile. Mrs. Shola David Bora is a non-executive director of Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC and an independent non-executive director of Coca-Cola Hellenic Bottling Company. Mrs. Shola is currently a PhD candidate at the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS, University of London. She was the chief executive for African regions in Standard Bank Group, responsible for the group's 19 markets in Africa, outside South Africa, from 2017 to 2021. Previously, she was the chief executive of Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC, a full-spectrum financial services holding company, and prior to that, she was the chief executive of Stanbic IBTC Bank PLC. Mrs. Shola was the chairperson of the Private Investors for Africa PIA from 2018 to 2021. She is an honorary senior member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Mrs. Shola is the winner of the CNBC African Business Woman of the Year Award 2016. Mrs. Shola David Bora went through various global CEO programs at the IASC Business School, Spain, Wharton Business School, USA, and the China-Europe International Business School, CEIBS, China, GCP of 2016. She obtained an MBA from the University of Manchester Business School, United Kingdom in 1984, and has a Bachelor of Science in Economics from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, 1981. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our first panelist, Mrs. Shola David Bora. Thank you. Next, I'll be introducing and inviting up Mr. Johnson Egu Chukwu. Mr. Johnson Chukwu is the founder and managing director, Cowrie Asset Management Limited. He is Chairman, Fidelity Pension Managers Limited. Chairman, Virgin Forest Energy Limited. Member, Board of Directors, Royal Cross Methodist Hospital, Ugweke, and Nkechi Colwell Methodist Hospital, Uzual Koli, both in Abia State. He has a BSc from the University of Lagos, an MBA from the prestigious Lagos Business School, Pan Atlantic University, Lagos. He is a Fellow, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, FCA, a Fellow, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, an Associate, Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers. He is an Honorary Senior Member, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. He is a member of the Institute of Directors. He has attended several courses in institutions such as the Harvard Business School in Boston, USA, the Stanford Graduate School of Business in California, IESC Business School, University of Navarra, Barcelona, Spain, Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, USA, and the London School of Economics in the United Kingdom. Mr. Johnson Chukwu has served as a facilitator with Terrapin, a world leader in business events and offices in London, New York, Singapore, Sydney, Dubai, and Johannesburg, and the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN. He is a regular speaker at AFSIC, Investing in Africa Conferences, London, and a media commentator on the economy, capital markets, and the banking industry. Mr. Johnson Chukwu's banking experience includes his work with Springbank PLC from 2006 to 2007, the Guardian Express Bank PLC from 2000 to year 2006, Diamond Bank PLC from 1997 to the year 2000, and Intercontinental Bank PLC from 1992 to 1997. Ladies and gentlemen, with a resounding applause, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Next, I'm going to be introducing and reading the profile for our other panelists, Dr. Chinyere Almona, who is in the room. Okay. Dr. Chinyere Almona has over 30 years of diversified leadership and management experiences. She is an expert in corporate governance and has experience working across private, non-governmental, and international developing sectors. Dr. Almona was recently recognized as one of the 50 most influential women leaders in governance, risk compliance, and financial crime prevention in Nigeria by the Morgans. Her status as an industry leader resonates within Nigeria and the broader African continent and is underscored by a recent appointment to Nigeria's Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee. She was on the 50 Women in Management Africa WIMA 2022 award list and made the list of the 50 most inspiring Nigerian women. She was listed among the 40 top women across Africa on the 2020 African Women in Banking and Finance Awards list in 2020. Dr. Almona is the author of several Christian leadership and business books. She is an international speaker and an accredited IFC trainer. Dr. Almona is currently serving as the Director General or the Chief Executive Officer at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the foremost chamber of commerce in West Africa, established in 1888. Dr. Almona is a seasoned board member and an advisor for several boards. She is an active angel investor under Rising Tide Africa, a female angel investors network. She is a fellow of the following institutes: the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN, the Institute of Management Consultants, the Institute of Directors, Ghana, Honorary. Dr. Almona has a specialist MBA in corporate social responsibility from Nottingham University Business School, United Kingdom, and holds a doctorate in business administration from the Business School of the Netherlands. She's a certified leadership coach with the Certified Coaches Federation Canada and a certified cognitive reflex conditioning practitioner. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me welcome and bring up Dr. Chinyere Almona. The resounding applause. At this point, I would like to please crave the indulgence of our keynote speaker to kindly join us on stage again.
Hello? All right, can we all appreciate our panelists one more time, please? Thank you. Okay, once again, my name is Olusegun Oyetunji, and it is my singular honor and pleasure to be moderating this panel. And once again, we would like to let you know that you can ask your questions. Please kindly pass them to the ushers. If you're also online, you can also share your questions online. Thank you. Before we go ahead, we'd like to take a remark from our panelists, at least for like a few minutes each, maybe like 3 minutes each. And we'd like to take from Mrs. Shola David-Boa, since she's online, so that we can just get her own quick remarks, and we'll start the Q&A session. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me. It's a great honor to join you today, and I do stand on existing protocol, but I would like to thank the grand host, Pastor I.D. Iliomade, my pastor, and also the chairman of the Network Business Club, Pastor Ernest Avi, for inviting me to be part of this discussion, a very important discussion. I'd also like to thank Mr. Tilewa Adebajo for an excellent job in the way he has comprehensively laid a solid foundation for our discussions today, which I'm hoping that myself and my distinguished co-panelists will be able to build upon. And I'll just share a few comments from my perspective briefly. Like Mr. Adebajo said, economic recovery is a marathon. It's hard work. It's very hard work over a sustained period of time. And it requires the right policies, it requires clear targets, and it also requires effective monitoring. There must also be policy coordination and, like we can all see clearly, fiscal discipline. And we must be monitoring the right metrics, because as the saying goes, what you measure is what gets done. And I believe that for a long time, we have been monitoring the wrong metrics. There are many measures, and Mr. Adebajo has clearly outlined all of them, inflation, FX, GDP, a whole range of measures that we can track and we must track. But what do we focus on? Because I genuinely believe that a wrong measure to focus on is the foreign exchange rate. That's just simply, the amount of naira vis-a-vis your dollars that you have. It's not a root cause. It's just a symptom of a problem we have with our economy. So what should we focus on rather than get distracted by our exchange rate? I think one of the measures that is important to focus on is productivity. Productivity is really the key to our economic recovery. And we've clearly seen the productivity gap that Nigeria has. And productivity is simply, how much output does each person produce, each worker? And there are various measures of productivity. So whether it's GDP per capita, whether it's the number of jobs that are created every month, unemployment rates, etc. One thing is sure, Nigeria's productivity indices are low compared to its peers in Africa and compared to other emerging markets. World Bank data for 2022 shows that Nigeria's GDP per capita is just above $2,000. You compare that with South Africa, which is close to $7,000 per capita, or even Egypt, that is above $4,000. And we haven't even spoken about countries like Brazil that are above $9,000, or China that are above $12,000 per capita. So we have a huge productivity gap. And how do we make sure that we get Nigeria moving, we get Nigeria working, we close our productivity gap? The one word I'll keep on repeating is jobs, jobs, and jobs. We have to track the number of jobs that we are growing. The World Bank says that the SME sector is critical for job growth. For every 10 jobs, 7 come out of SME. So making sure that we actually enable our SMEs is important. The other thing is competitiveness. Nigeria has to become globally competitive. No matter how much our trade or industrial policies provide protection, whether it's through tariffs or bans or subsidies, these can only be temporary. We have to develop global competitiveness in some goods or services. It doesn't have to be everyone, but there must be some things that we can be competitive at. I'm always surprised when I go to a UK grocery. I see, mangoes from Ghana, pineapples from Ghana, grapes from South Africa, flowers from Kenya. There's absolutely nothing you see from Nigeria. So what are we going to do to make sure that we can become competitive? Nigeria is one of the best pineapples in the whole world. How do we remove all the barriers, build the infrastructure to make it more efficient to produce in our country? And it has to be a sector by sector focus, because trying to do everything at once is a route to failure. You cannot boil an ocean. We've got to select the sectors and track their productivity. A well-known example that we all know is the telco sector. In 2000, its contribution to GDP was next to nothing. Today, the telco sector contributes about 15% of Nigeria's GDP. That's how we must track each sector to make sure that we can drive its productivity. The last thing I will mention is trade. Mr. Adebayo had already mentioned intra-Africa trade, which, is extremely low, below 10%. How do we drive that? How do we enable intra-Africa trade, pull down all the barriers, visas, customs, borders, capital flows that inhibit intra-Africa trade? Because unless we are able to drive our productivity up, we are not going to recover economically. So I will conclude by just stating that I believe that the route to a sustainable economic recovery is driving up our productivity. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Shola Debora. Thank you.
I would say it's very interesting. And when I came in here, I was very impressed because since the outbreak of the COVID, we've not had such a gathering like this. A lot of the discussions we're having economically, politically, has been online, and I must tell you that it feels different, to be physical in this kind of gathering. It's not the same thing, I must tell you, because you leave your office or you leave your home, you come here for this purpose. Not like when you're at home, you're doing other things, you get distracted. Particularly when you have little ones, kids at home. Other things draw your attention. But right here, you come down here, you sit down here, and you suck in all the things, the panelists, the experts are speaking about. And there's just so much to take up. One thing I would say is that it also brings the issues real to you. It becomes real to you. And, they speak to you in such a way that, you begin to, it sort of sensitizes you and brings to that awareness that look, we need to do something. In our little way, we need to do something, and information is key. Shalabra spoke about production. We need to do something. We need to get in something. We need to get out something to the market, and we can do this really. And I must say, it's a take home for me, and particularly maybe for some of us that are doing, 8 to 5. We could also help some of the information we get here. We can also take it home to help our spouses in their businesses, to advise them, and tell them that there's so much grounds to cover. They spoke about the GDP, talk about the inflationary issues, but like the keynote speaker did mention that we need to bring down inflation. Inflation will only discourage investment. So those things are things that whatever aspect, whatever space you're going into, you take cognizance of these things, and they are very important. I'm so happy that I'm here. I look forward to more of this, really. I just hope that we'll do more of this again. One other thing I want to say again is that because this is an initiative of the City of David, I would say that maybe you can work with the pastorate. You can also speak to the pastorate. Maybe one Sunday, we speak about this economic issues, business issues. Speak about it, because City of David is a brand.
Yes.
And we always say, let us bring our kind. Yes. These are the sort of things that will bring people. There are people that want to hear some of these things. And I must commend you guys. Great job.
The event has left an indelible quest in my heart. I mean, I never knew that the level of decay was so much. In fact, we just have to go back to the nitty-gritty. Meet the people in power, even those who have taken away the monies, try to negotiate with them. Don't pontify anybody, but have a discussion, because this is for the general interest of the country. Let's come back, let's bounce back. Looking at the graph and statistics, my heart broke. And it wasn't just in one sector. We're dealing with hydra-headed monsters. And if you try to cover this part, another part will spill over. But I know it's doable. Nigerians are the best. Any part of the world they go to, they do very well. How much more when we do our own? Believe me, if it's one thing that this presidency achieves, you will see a massive return of people back home. You will see foreigners investing in Nigeria. I mean, we are, as they say, we didn't start answering the giant of Africa for no reason. My heart bleeds. The best doctors, Nigerians. Abroad in the United States, the best phlebotomists, Nigerians. You see our children going down, second generation Americans, and they're breaking the ceiling. So why should I go to somebody's country and become a slave? Let me fix my own. Let us do something now to stop the hemorrhaging of human resource, to stop doctors and teachers and all that leaving the country. We need to get our nation back to the dignity and to the state where it deserves to be. And the work starts from the presidency, the people in Nigeria, and the private sector. Let's attract investment. When we make these changes, you will see what will happen. People will come in and invest in us.
I'm going to call on Mr. Johnson Chukwu now to also quickly give us his brief remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Let me start by appreciating my dear Pastor Pasaidi. Because of his vision that we have this program. I must also thank my boss. Many of you may not have known that NSTB was my direct boss sometime in the 90s when we were in Diamond Bank. It was from that office he became the Deputy Governor of Central Bank. And when Tilewa was showing the graphs, you could see that during his tenure in the Central Bank, it was responsible for managing our foreign currency. At that point, we had a stable exchange rate. So I've just stepped back a bit. I mean, Tilewa did a great job in the presentations. Thank you so much, Tilewa. The graphs were quite, I could see a number of the pastors shaking their heads. He actually captured everything we needed to see. I just need to say a few things that it relates to, because there's a saying in African parlance that if you don't know when That if you don't know where the rain started beating you, you won't know where it will end. So, and I will say back to a couple of years back, and just 10 years, which good thing Tilewa did, illustration of where we're coming from. In 2014, Nigeria's economy grew by 6.22%. And that was actually when it was beginning to taper the growth rate. The next year, after the election, 2015, the economy grew by 2.79%. In 2016, the economy went into a recession and contracted by 1.58%. The following year, 2017, the economy grew by only 0.82%. By the time we got to 2018, the economy grew by 1.91%. 2019, the economy grew by 2.27%. And in 2020, the economy contracted again by 1.92%. I'm saying this so that we know that economic performance is not a happenstance. It's the choices that we made as a people that led us to where we are today. And I have to emphasize this so that we would not repeat the same mistake. Particularly, at the minimum we do is to hold those who are responsible for governance accountable so that they don't do the wrong things. Tilewa told about waste and means funding of 30 trillion naira. It told us about the CBN Act and the Fiscal Responsibility Act that we are all breached. There was no squeaker of complaint. We just sat down there and our economy was ruined. The truth is that all of us have become poorer by the fact that our currency had devalued from an average of 400 or even 300 to 800, no matter who you are. If you look at how the economy has actually gone bad, in 2018-2019, the National Monetary Poverty Index said that Nigeria had 40.1% poverty level. By the time we got 2022, it had gone to 63% poverty level. It is a period of 3 years. And at that point, our own Bureau of Statistics said that Nigeria's multidimensional poverty level was 133 million people. The World Poverty Clock said Nigeria had 71 million people who were living in extreme poverty. The simple reason that the economy was growing at a very slow rate, our population was growing at about 3%. When you are producing fewer goods and you're adding more mouth to eat it, so what will happen? The proportion that anybody gets reduced. So those who are in government position or those who have more power, they will eat more. The rest of us will eat less. And when you look at all the parameters, the country has continued to descend because we can't have very, very few time. I will just go on some of the things I think we should do. And I think we can dimension that because the truth is that if we don't start growing the economy, like Shola David Brower said, if we don't have productivity, if we do not improve the quality of what we produce so that we can sell it to other people, we will remain where we are today. I won't go back to the areas of our level of national debt, collapse of our reserve, but the key thing is that this economy has continued to grow at a very inconsequential rate while the population has continued to increase. And what are those things that has happened? Or what we need to do going forward as a people? And I can dimension them into 3 segments. What we may call immediate. The first thing we need to do is to restore confidence of the Nigerian economy. Confidence has taken a flight out of this economy. The pressures we are seeing on the exchange rate is partly because confidence has been eroded. And you cannot have confidence in an economy when the currency is not stable and inflation is at 26.75%. So we need to address those two elements. And they are what I call urgent and important items that need to be addressed by economic managers. To address the issue of the exchange rates, we need to do 2 things. One is, and I'm happy they are mentioning that they're looking for funding. I had mentioned this, and I remember I said this in church a couple of months back, that the government has no choice than to look for funding from either a multilateral agency or bilateral partner. The government has mentioned they are going to some banks and they're trying to raise $7 billion from collateralizing our future earnings from dividend payment from natural gas, LNG. They're also trying to borrow another $3 billion from Afrexim Bank. And one of the things I said, but I'm not going to go back to that, is that we needed to have done that before we harmonized the exchange rate. That we needed to have cleared arrears. But we didn't do that, so we want to do that now. So we must generate liquidity to stabilize the exchange rate. If you don't clear the arrears of unmet demand, there's no way you stabilize the exchange rate. If your exchange rate is not stable, there's no way you have confidence to put money in the economy. Because for every time Naira shifts or moves, your value has been eroded. So beyond those of us who are stuck, why would any foreign investor bring money to you and change it today at 500 Naira to $1, and the next day he wants to take the money, is 1,000 Naira to $1? He has lost 50% of his income, of his wealth. So he can't do that. So one, we need to stabilize the exchange rate. To stabilize the exchange rate, we need to look for funding. Second aspect, we need to improve crude production. That's our natural source of foreign exchange earnings. So we need to improve crude production so as to earn further or more increased foreign exchange to stabilize our currency. The other aspect of macroeconomic stability is inflation rate. The inflation rate pressure we're facing today are coming from three variables. One is the food inflation. And that food inflation is largely because the food we consume is 99% locally made. But we're not producing enough because of insecurity in the food belts of the country. So we need to address that. And that is an endogenous factor. It's something within our control. Because we just allow that to fester until it got to this point. So we need to address the issue of food production. That's one element of the pressure we're having on inflation. The other element, Tilewa spoke extensively on that. Ways and means funding. You're injecting liquidity without productive activities to support it. So that excess liquidity, or what you call liquidity suffix, is impacting on price levels. And the other component of pressures we're having on inflation is the pass-through effect of depreciation of the local currency. Because you certainly have some imported items. There are just three segments. So that's what I call the immediate. The second on what I call the medium term, we need to massively invest in infrastructure. Because we're talking of what are the solutions to our problems. So we need to touch on those things. We need to invest in infrastructure. And when you talk of infrastructure investment, clearly from what Tilewa said, the government does not have the headroom to build infrastructure from budget allocation. The concept that we'll continue to build infrastructure from budget allocation will never allow this country to develop. Because it takes us another 100 years. It has taken us more than 20 years to build the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road. So if you have to build a 130-kilometer road in 20 years, what will it take you to build the entire road infrastructure in the country? So the government has to evolve. A private sector initiative to attract private capital, particularly at the minimum, to build commercially viable infrastructure, road infrastructure. Next is energy supply. There's always a philosopher that said, look, anything that has no energy, we either not move. If you put energy on this chair, it will start dancing. But without energy, it will be stationary. Animals that live long, what they do is that they go into hibernation without consuming energy. If your economy does not have enough energy supply, your economy is in hibernation. So if we don't address the value chain in the power sector and make sure that power sector achieve commercial viability, we are not going to have the necessary energy supply to make the economy competitive, like Shola said. This economy has to be productive and competitive. Third factor, you're making me job. Anyway, maybe I've used my time. I take the other question.
Thank you very much, sir.
But a couple of, not for lack of script, but for lack of time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Let us appreciate him. He does this regularly and for a living. Thank you for your wonderful analysis, sir. I would like to remind our audience, I would also like to take questions from you, so please keep your questions coming, because we want to make it as interactive. We'd also want to take 1 or 2 live questions too, so just prepare in case our ushers come. And we are mindful of time, so I'm going to call on Dr. Chinyere Omona as well to also give a speech, and we'll also ask questions as we go. Thank you.
This on. Thank you very much. And good evening, everyone. Thanks to the network for inviting me. Thanks to Pastor ID. Thanks to Pastor Ernest. Thank you so much. And thanks to our keynote speaker. It's good to be between two economists. You're an economist, right? It's good to be between two economists. Sometimes when I listen to speeches like this that describe the state of the economy and what is going on, at what end I feel very depressed. I'm like, goodness, how did we get here and how do we live from here? So it's quite depressing to see all these charts. And then on the other side, I said to myself, if we're at the bottom like this, the only way forward is up. So there's hope to move up, there's hope to expand because we've contracted to the point where we're almost finished. So there's now room to do a lot of other things. The other panelists have spoken a lot about what we need to do as a nation, and they're all absolutely correct. But I believe that the nation is made up of the private sector and the public sector. And the private sector must be strengthened to be able to do all that it needs to do to contribute significantly to the economy. Without that strength within the private sector, the economy can't grow. Pastor Shora talked about productivity, talked about competitiveness, all of these things. They may sound like big words, but they're words that everybody in this room will have responsibility for in one way or the other. So I just want to focus my attention really to the things that the private sector organizations should think of doing, to the things that the leaders of the private sector organizations, who I believe are sitting in this room, should do for their businesses to be considered productive, for their businesses to be considered competitive so that they can contribute significantly to the economic development. And all of these nice things that my brother said will also come to pass because the private sector will rise up and do what it needs to do. The first thing that comes to mind is market diversity. Pastor Shora talked about going to a shop in UK and seeing products from Ghana and other countries, but nothing from Nigeria. So we need to think as Nigerians, as business people, as business leaders, where else can I sell my goods? So we say, oh, the purchasing power today is so low in Nigeria, but the purchasing power may not be as low in other countries. So have you explored, where else can I sell my goods? Where else can my goods, would they be looking for what I produce? Or can I produce what they are looking for? That's what you need to think about. How do I diversify that market? Today, we're talking about AFCFTA. That means that entire Africa should be your marketplace. So how are we taking advantage of that opportunity? But for you to diversify or find new markets, you have to be competitive. You have to be competitive because the quality of your product needs to be at par with the quality in other places. And the price of your product, unfortunately, the cost of doing business is so high that if you produce and put it out there, it's too expensive. It's cheaper to import things from China than to buy the ones that are produced there because the cost of production is so high. So how do we reduce our cost of production? How do we explore ways to be more efficient? That's where technology comes in. We then need to figure out what kind of technology will be suitable for my business type. What do I need to leverage? How can I leverage technology? Sometimes when we think of technology, you say, oh, that company had this kind of technology, let me go and get it for my business. Is it suitable for your business? For you to leverage technology and be efficient, you have to remodel or re-engineer your processes. Old processes, even if you put all the technology in the world, will still not be efficient because you'll be spending money going through the manual process and going through the other process with the technology. So we think technology, today we're thinking AI, how can we leverage that to make our businesses more efficient, to make our businesses a bit more agile and nimble in the society we live today so that our cost structure can drop and will be competitive price-wise in the marketplace. The other thing that comes to mind is what you business leaders can do is partnerships, strategic partnerships. When I came in here, Pastor Aide was talking and he talked about partnerships and collaboration. I think that's a new oil. You have to find who you can collaborate with. Because once you're able to partner with people, you can do so much more. You can reach more people, you can go into new markets, and your product can go to different places. So when I encourage people to join the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry and other chambers, it's because it gives you a platform to engage across the globe. And so you can find people who are doing similar things that you're doing in Europe, in other parts of the world, and you can collaborate. You can provide certain raw materials from Nigeria, but they may be able to bring in technology or technical know-how that can lower your cost of doing business so you can be more competitive and you can engage in other markets. I think the last point I will make is around skills development. So today we're all talking about everybody has jabbed. They've all left. Okay, so where does that leave you as business leaders? Where do you find the skills to do all the work that you need to do? Remember, we want to be productive. You can't be productive if you don't have the right skills. So you have to be thinking, how do I get the right skills? Or how do I create the right skills? Interestingly, once the economy is down, everybody's thinking, what costs should I cut? And you're thinking, let's cut training costs. Okay, I remember reading somewhere of a CFO who went to the CEO and said, we can't spend all this money on training. What if we train them and they leave? And the CEO turned around and said to him, what if we don't train them and they stay? Because then you're worse off. Then you can't be productive. Then you can't be competitive. Therefore, even as there's an exodus of young people and going away, begin to think, how do I create value within my staff, within my team, such that I increase their ability to be productive, and by so doing, I'm also able to attract value. And once you're able to do that, you'll be able to attract the investment we're talking about. I remember he said something about confidence being very low. Trust is also very low. But if you show and demonstrate that you can support and increase skills within your business, you'll get the trust that you need. I think I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Can you all hear me? Oh, thank you. Okay, I know our time is fast spent, and we appreciate our speakers, so we'll just quickly take some questions, and we'll move ahead as well. Our guest speaker, thank you so much, sir, for all the speech you gave to us. And I'll just quickly throw a question generally, and we can all respond to it, but we would like to get your own response first. A few days ago, you were giving some interview sessions, very popular ones, recently at a popular station, and you mentioned a couple of things. Since we're on the topic of economic recovery and strategies for growth and sustainability, I'd like to just quickly ask, you touched particularly on revenue and how we can generate revenue, and you mentioned that the government has been focused on, for example, IGRs like tax, maybe customs and all that, but revenue generation, what are your thoughts? What would you like to say? Because NNPC, for example, you also mentioned that we don't even know what NNPC has remitted to the federal allocation account. So we'd like to even know, as a country, before we go into the private sector, if you're advising the government or maybe just sharing your thoughts, I would like you to touch more on that revenue generation. What else can we do beyond what they're already doing? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you might be the best person to answer that question, because you are on the committee that is doing tax reform and revenue generation. So maybe she might be able to give us some insights as to what she's doing, because she's hands-on at the moment. I think she'll be the best person to answer that.
Okay, ma. Over to you, ma. Thank you.
About revenue generation, we're thinking, what else can government do to bring in money? And really, without even making a lot of efforts, one area that we see that is so glaring is government assets, properties that we can leverage. If you look around Lagos, there are so many prime properties lying waste because we haven't figured out how to eliminate the bureaucracy in being able to extract value from them. You can partner with the private sector to develop those assets and use them well. You can sell if you need to, but the important thing is that those assets contain so much value and they're latent value. We must look in that direction, and government must look in that direction. Government is already doing something. I remember, I think last year they constituted the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, MOFI, to say, let's register all the government assets, create a catalog of all of them, and then see how we can put them forward for investors to consider investing in them. So that's one. The second thing is our mineral deposits. We are so rich in mineral deposits in this country. However, we don't, think about it very carefully. I was talking to a member of the chamber who is in the solid mineral space, and he was, he was so concerned about the fact that once we mine, we tend to ship almost raw what we mine. There is no facility, there's no structure to be able to process them to a state where they can attract more value in the international space. So we sell our solid mineral very cheap because we haven't added any form of processing. But that's something that we need to do. We need to be a bit more intentional in that direction. And with the solid mineral ministry being, I think they're thinking of something to do in that direction. I also think that government needs to support a lot of the industries that we have neglected. One is trading services. We need to pay attention to our services and how we can trade across borders on our services. If you think about the things that we produce here, our music, our culture, our food, spices, these are things that across the world are looking for. And so we can actually support them and get them to earn foreign currency for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hello? All right, then, quickly. We have a question here from the room from Mr. Obum Ikechebilu. I'm sure our panelists have already touched on this, but I'll just quickly summarize. He would like to know what's the hope of the common man, since we're in a geometric downward trend of the government and the country as a whole. I'll just try and paraphrase a bit. So there are some practical things that affect the everyday man. A lot of people, beyond what we tell the government and all that. For example, food inflation, I think, is at its highest currently, over 25% within the last average, 12 months and all that. So if you were going to speak, I think I'll talk to Mr. Johnson Chukwu, to somebody in this room and those online. You've highlighted them, but what should they be doing? We're not talking of the public sector now, strategies. And we're not talking of just so there's conditional cash transfers to the poorest of the poor, so many things. So if you're talking to people who are at a lower part of the economy, what would you advise them to do within the next 12 months? Thank you.
The question is, what would I advise an average person to do to mitigate the impact of the high inflationary pressures we are facing, particularly food inflation? And so you obviously are talking of somebody whose household consumption is skewed in favor of food. That means they are spending more than 50% of their household income on food. So the person is at the rung of the ladder. My approach is that people should, as much as possible, try to have a secondary income. In this instance, the secondary income could come in the form of agricultural engagement. And today, there's greenhouse farming. So you can actually have a small piece of land, maybe just a plot of land down where you can do some level of agriculture. You can have line irrigation and produce what you can eat, or produce a significant portion of what you can eat. I have a couple of friends who are doing agricultural activities. They are producing vegetables, tomato, several things. And the way they are doing this farming is so smaller than this hall. Okay, they can go to somebody who has a plot of land who has not developed it, and then go and hire the place. So if it's a relation, he could give it to you free. If it's not a relation, you could pay a token rental income for it. And then you can possibly do your vegetable, do your cassava, do a couple of things that you can use to reduce the pressures you are going through in terms of food production. So I think individuals should try to get possibly a secondary income. And second income, it's not just in agriculture. Even you can have from your little savings, open a barbering salon beside your house. And then at the end of the day, when you finish some work, you stop there and you have two people who are barbering for you, and you make sure that they are not doing away with your money.
Fantastic.
So it's critical that given where we are today, that families try to build secondary income to support themselves?
All right, thank you. We're mindful of our time, so just let us know that we're wrapping up soon. And I hope we're enjoying so far. Can we please appreciate them, please? I would like that. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Roger. So I'm going to call on my colleague, my co-anchor, to please take one question from the online audience. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody that's joined us online and encourage you to please keep sending your questions in. I'm trusting that they can answer most of the questions tonight, but if for any reason we can't, we'll figure out a way to get across to everyone that registered possible answers. So we have a very interesting question from someone online, and I think this question will resonate with a lot of us. It says, Nigerians are now using US dollars as a store of value, which means unofficially, US dollars is now Nigeria's currency. Number one, what are the ways the federal government should approach this complex issue? And number two, to exploit over 25 billion US dollars in dumb accounts, is it possible for the federal government to issue a high-yielding US dollar to Nigeria convertible bond to target impactful infrastructure investments? So I'm not sure who will be taking this, but...
Okay, if we have Mrs. Shola David-Bora still online, because she's a part of our panel, I would like her to please respond to that briefly. Media team. Okay.
Thank you for the question. It's a very good question. And I think when it comes to store of value, you should be looking at diversification of your assets. So yes, foreign currency is one store of value, and investing in a dollar instrument would help you to store value. But property is also another store of value, because property appreciates as well, and it's important to see that as an alternative investment option. Regarding whether the government can create instruments for domiciliary account holders to invest in, I believe there are already dollar instruments in the market today that domiciliary account holders can invest in. I'm aware that Stanbic IBTC, for instance, has a dollar investment fund. There are also some equities that are dual listed that you can actually invest in, and they're listed both on the foreign stock market as well as the Nigerian exchange. So that's another store of value. So I guess the point I'm making is that, yes, foreign currency is one store of value, but don't place all your bets on one foreign currency, and don't place all your bets on one asset class. The funding that the federal government is raising is going to create liquidity. Once they've cleared the backlog of their foreign exchange obligations, especially with foreign portfolio investors, hopefully we expect liquidity to come back into the market, and the exchange rate might appreciate. I mean, it started appreciating a bit, but you find out that some people might actually lose money on the exchange market. So the short answer is yes, you can invest in a dollar instrument, but that's not the only asset class that is a store of value. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. Okay, I'll quickly direct the next question to our keynote speaker. I know that you, how would I put it, diverted the question on revenue when I asked you that question. And it's something you've been commenting on regularly. So Mrs. Shola David-Bora spoke about productivity and our population and all that, human capital development, and we know that we have a strong talent base. However, we're also aware, like Dr. Almona also mentioned, that a lot of our youthful talents are now globally dispersed. I won't use the word jackpot. I know we're expecting that, but that term is now being overused. My question will be directly, we have a strong, vibrant, serious economic bloc of diaspora, not just political in terms of how they also can contribute They can't vote. So there are so many things. But one of the things they can do is vote with their income, currencies they send. So remittance. So I would like you to touch on the aspect of opportunity of that remittance because it's growing. We know that remittance is a lot, and I think it can be a lot more because we're not engaging our diaspora as we should, in my own personal opinion. So what's your take on how we can really, beyond FDIs, foreign direct investment, how can we tap into our own diaspora network and ensure remittance and connection back to the economy is done, just like India and other big economies? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. I spent 3 years as a senior technical advisor to a minister of industry, trade, and investment. And in that period, we went on a lot of investment drives, Davos, a lot of places, and things like that. And one of the most important things we learned was that, or at least that I learned, is that the most important investment is local direct investment. So, first of all, the people who are here need to start investing in Nigeria first. What are your companies, what are the Nigerian companies doing? The flour mills, the Nestle's, the Dangotes, and even the medium-sized companies who have cottage industries, are they doing well? Are they investing? So this is really where the direction is. And I think it goes to the issue of productivity again that Shola David Bora had mentioned, that if your economy has low productivity issues, if it has some challenges within the factors of production, power is a big challenge for us. So if your factors of production are not very competitive, then it's difficult for you to be competitive. And, like I said, it might be cheaper for you to import something from China than to manufacture it in Nigeria. So these are the challenges we have in terms of structuring the economy, in terms of policy. Yes, diaspora remittances are between $25 to $30 billion a year. The challenge is that these remittances come into the domiciliary accounts. But because of the distortion of the exchange rates, you are seeing that you will now go and withdraw your cash after you get it to your account and take it to the parallel market. So as you can see now with the new policy that came out today from the central bank, they're saying that you can now transfer some of that money to another DOM account. So that should help in terms of when you liberalize that system, because the banking system is capturing this money, but it's losing it to a parallel market when it comes to exchange because of the rates. So if you agree on a Naira rate with somebody now, then you can transfer those dollars back to him, and then he will give you a Naira cover at whatever exchange rate you want. So because we didn't have the interbank market, is restricting that. So when you bring back the interbank market, anybody who brings in diaspora money, I can now agree with you on a rate, which might be higher. Then I don't need to go and withdraw the money to give to you. I can just transfer it to another DOM account. So that will keep that in the system. At a point in time in Nigeria, 40% of the money supply was held in foreign currency because there was confidence in the system. So, and people prefer to hold their domiciliary accounts in Nigeria than abroad. So if we can restore confidence, then we can get that market up and running. We've done it before. We can do it again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, due to time, we'd like to manage our time exigencies. We'll just take briefly 2 questions from the online audience, and we'll take a live question from the seated audience here. Thank you.
Very much. So we're going to read 2 of the questions here, and just to mention, if there are any questions that we cannot take, please send them via the Zoom platform, and they'll be responded to because the slides will be shared at the end of this meeting. So please drop your questions, and I trust that our speakers will speak to each of them. So there are 2 questions I'm going to read out quickly. One says, so much for economic theory. What about the moral fabric and core values of Nigerians as a people? This is from Oluyinka Gbajabiamila. Another one here says, very similar actually, so I would say they're the same if you like. What is the import of corruption on our economic growth? Bad governance is a big problem, and the citizens are quiet when a bad government is in place, especially when the government that rigged the election, what can be done? So I don't know which of our speakers wants to try to touch on these.
Okay. And can we just take one more question to add to the two, since they're similar? Do we have any live?
Yes. No, there's another one here, please, if you can. Okay. Someone has said, good evening, sir. Talking about production, how can we increase the production rate? Please expatiate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. I wanted to also see if we have anyone in the audience. If you want to ask a question, okay, please. Can the ushers please confirm and we'll. Okay. All right. Thank you. While we do that, may I crave your indulgence just to take the question along with the other ones? Okay. Thank you. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Tunde Arugumati, African Incentive Partnerships. My question is to Mr. Adebajo. What you've presented is a fantastic template on going forward. What I've noticed, especially because I was with the Nigeria Economic Summit Group for about 15 years as a consultant, is that most of the time we do not have, Nigeria, for instance, does not have like a opposition party that mirrors economic alternatives. How can we enforce, because we keep on talking about change, hope, and whatever, when is going to be action, as in whatever is discussed in places like this, probably the Networks Club might want to be a kind of advocacy of sorts, whereby you reflect this, and luckily enough, even though the present government, dived into the deep end of the economic mess, but they seem to be a bit, they seem to listen to, advice from outside. So how do you think we can format this kind of situation whereby when we get this kind of recommendations, we can get them somehow reflected in policy and then monitor, somebody said about monitoring, monitor to ensure that these kind of things are followed up on with government. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you very much, sir. Our panelists, please, we can also, Dr. Chinyere, would you like to respond? Oh, okay, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo. Okay, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much for that question. It's about institutional capacity. A forum like this, where are the government people? If you're having a forum of this nature in the States, you will see government people very much interested in your communique. They will be in attendance. And they'll also tell you that, okay, when you finish, let's send out a communique, and then they will engage. And then they will understand, and then they will look at you as a sounding board. So in most countries, all these sort of summits, they don't take them lightly. So even before their central banks reach monetary policy, they've done their engagement. They have the stakeholder engagements whereby they don't need to beg them to come. They are the ones telling you to, when is your next meeting going to be? What are the issues? Because they want the feedback from the system to be able to design their policies. So it is this lack of institutional capacity that we have that is causing these problems. So yes, I think what we can do is do a communique, send it to the Economic Summit Group, send it to the desired people, but as I always say, do they listen? Are they listening? Or do they really care about things? But we need to continue to press, and we need to continue to have that advocacy. Because at the end of the day, that is why maybe you need the press. So maybe we need to do a press release so that people can see what we have done, post it somewhere, and then it can become to the attention of the public, and it can be part of public debates. And now with social media, it makes life a lot easier. So a lot of all these things, we need to get it out to social media and let it begin to trend and get into people's consciousness so that government will eventually begin to understand what's going on. But that is the challenge we have in Nigeria. And I'm sure you know that from your 15 years at the Economic Summit Group.
Okay.
Yes, it is. I mean, that's why, how did we start this? I didn't even know that this thing had grown beyond. We started this in King's Court as just a group of us getting together, talking and making sure we're supporting each other. Look at where we are today. We have a very good chairman supporting us, very much experienced. So we need to continue to grow these sort of things. And we also know personalities, or maybe we can now engage. Decide we want to engage the authorities to say, okay, fine, this is what we've come up with in our network group. we write to the central bank governor, we write to the Minister of Finance and say, this is what we have said, this is what we'd like to see. And we send them our findings. So we cannot stop but to continue to dialogue. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Can we please give him a round of applause? Thank you very much. So we are rounding off now, and just to remind us that the Networks Business Club, like keynote speaker also said, is a club of Christian businessmen and women, and we do a lot of advocacy work actually, and this is one of the reasons why we are having this event and multiple events. Some of the events we even have regularly every year is what we also call the experience session, where we take this monthly, and we've been doing this for 3 years now, online once a month, just to make sure that we are adding to the discussions and the dialogue as much as we can beyond that. So we are not just idle. Thank you. So I would just like to take the final points from our keynote speakers so that we can round off and not take your time, and we can have time to network as well. So I'd like to call on Dr. Yes, so I wanted you to respond to that and your final points as well. Thank you very much.
So every time I hear a question about corruption, I always say to myself, this question is so good, it doesn't have an answer. Because we all can talk about corruption, but the nation is made up of people. And why the top echelon, they can get away with anything is because there's this understanding that even those who are complaining today, once you put them in a place of power, they stop complaining and start chopping. You know that thing they say about you shouldn't be talking while you're eating. So once they start to chop, they forget the issue of governance. So I think we all have a personal responsibility in our spaces to uphold good governance and uphold ethics. I saw a snapshot of an Arise commentary that talked about how much we pray in this country, that we are the most prayerful nation. But then you wonder, if we pray so much, how come each individual cannot uphold integrity in their place of work? So back to that thing about the private sector, we have a role to play in that regard. But definitely governance is critical. If you don't uphold good governance, it just wears away your institution and eventually it will collapse like a pack of cards. So governance is critical. Want to have your
Well, I think just to thank everybody and then thank the chairman and my pastor, Pastor Eli Omade, for this invitation. And then also thank the panelists, the two ladies and gentlemen, for their contributions in support of the presentation. It's been very enlightening for me, also the responses. And I think we have a great country. There's no doubt about that. And I think we're all frustrated that we're not reaching our potential. But it is well with us.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'd also like to take Mrs. Shola David Boha, her final remarks. Then we'll take Mr. Johnson Chukwu as well. Can we have Mrs. Shola David Boha?
Yes. Nigeria's economic recovery is going to be private sector led. And as private sector operators, we have to focus on making sure that we build productive organizations that are well organized, that are run properly, with good governance, because I can assure you that there is lots of capital across the globe looking for a home, but they're looking for well-run companies that they can invest in. So let's focus on, one by one, setting up companies that we can grow and build and be contributors to driving the productivity of our country. Thank you.
Please go ahead, sir.
Well, once again, I thank Pastor Heidi, who is our leader, and the chairman and vice chairman of the Network Business Club. My concluding comments are that virtually every Nigerian understands our problem. Nigeria's economic problem has become like football, where everybody's an analyst. So it is not that we don't know the problem. It is just that the people who have been given the responsibility, or who have assumed the responsibility to address the problem, are unable to address them or are distracted by other factors. The challenge we have is not because we are Africans, it's not because we are Nigerians, it's not because we have multi-ethnic tribe, it's not because of anything, just because we got it wrong, we have gotten it wrong with leadership. Tidewa has shown us graphically where leadership has taken us from and where we are today. So we must get it right with leadership. Once we get it right with leadership, we will fix everything about this country. Many countries have done it. It is not an African problem. Vietnam has done it. Vietnam used to be a basket case. Those of us who were young in the 80s can remember all the films we saw about Vietnam were Vietcong. They were throwing their babies at American soldiers as bomb. But today, if you go to a Nike shop anywhere in the world, what you buy is made in Vietnam. So if you think Vietnam is too far-fetched, Rwanda, your next door neighbor, has become the best on our development in Africa. Nigeria has sea hope. It is not yet a hopeless situation, but we will pray and work and make sure we select the right leaders. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you all. Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your time. Indeed, this has been a wonderful panel session and the keynote speech. And the theme for today has been economic recovery, strategies for growth, and sustainability, the way forward for Nigeria. At this point, we'd like to thank our panelists. We can't thank you enough. One more time, can we give them a wonderful round of applause? Okay. And we also acknowledge Mrs. Shola David Boha for joining us online via technology, the wonders of technology. So let us appreciate her too as well. Okay. And at this point, before I hand over to my co-anchor, I would like our guests to please join Pastor ID, chairman, and a couple of other dignitaries to take a picture, a group picture, and we'll be able to do this. But before we do that, because Pastor Shola is online, can we just have her online so that we don't exclude her as well? And can we have our panelists please stand? Pastor ID and chairman, we'll take this. Then we will have continuous ones at the backdrop there. Ladies and gentlemen, technology is wonderful. It is. This is 2023. Welcome, sir.
Very, very interesting point is this. One should be able to identify opportunity from every situation. When the Bible says, when people are saying they are casting down, we are being lifted up. Every opportunity, every crisis situation brings up opportunity. In Nigeria today, I was in the airport yesterday, I saw a number of things being exported out of the country. People are thinking of what they can make. Today, people are roasting fufu, that raw cassava. After turning to fufu, instead of cooking, they roast it, they dry it into powder, and they're exporting that. So the opportunities in Nigeria. So this network concept is to enable us to identify opportunities. For example, African trade. What can we do? Look at the number of what we send out of Nigeria to African countries. Too low because of the bottlenecks. But a challenge came up today. I learned that in Ghana, it takes only 4 days to export yam. In Nigeria, it's 80 days. By that time, the yam is rotten already at the port. So what do? Is for us to find a way out to get this thing done. Corruption, can we fight it? Everybody sees corruption as an opportunity. Nobody wants to fight corruption because they want to harvest from it. But what do? Is opportunity outside Nigeria, ship to Ghana and take your things to Ghana and ship through Ghana. If the environment is okay, it's okay. Like people fly through Ghana these days, through Benin, because it's cheaper there. So the network enables us to see new opportunities and make good use of that opportunity, which to me, as a online marketing person, I'm trying to see how I can get my product to Ghana.
You call me out upon the waters, you in the mystery, in oceans deep. My faith will stand. Come on, you make it your prayer. And I will call upon your name, Jesus, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are your grace abounds in deepest waters. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. Come on, you sing. Where feet may fail. Come on. You've never failed. Come on. And you won't stop now, Jesus. So I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of. Come on, let it be your prayer. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you will call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger. Come on. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon
Networks, thank you for these 1 minute. Just 30 seconds, to give in closing remarks. On behalf of our chairman, Pastor Dr. Enesebi, MFR, and Pastor ID, and the whole and the entire Business Networks Club, we want to say thank you to every single person that is here tonight. All protocols observed. We want to say thank you to all our pastors that have joined us from, all over Lagos and everywhere. We want to say thank you to every single one. Most of it was short notice, and you're all here. We had full room. Most importantly, we want to say thank you to our keynote speaker and to the panelists. I want to say thank you to Mr. Adetilewa Adebajo and Pastor Shola David Bora, who is one of us, and my darling sister, Dr. Amuna, and Mr. Johnson. Thank you so much. It was really, the whole of Nigeria, we're talking about it on the seat there. Every single person in Nigeria needs to hear this. And I'm hoping and believing we're going to do a bigger one to involve even more people. There needs to be this sensitization and this awareness program going on, and every single one of us contributing to the greatness of this nation. Something has to happen, and it starts with each of us. Like Pastor Shola says, the private sector definitely have to get involved. Thank you so much. Do have a lovely evening, and we'll see you sometime soon. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, my chairman. Shall we pray, please? Please, let's rise as we pray. Eternal Rock of Ages, we want to thank you for this insightful and impactful session. Thank you for our pastor. Thank you for our chairman. Thank you for the panel. Thank you for wisdom that you have given to them. Father, we say glory be to your holy name in the name of Jesus. We commit our nation and our economy managers onto your hands. We pray for wise and understanding hearts in the mighty name of Jesus. We pray in the name that is above all name that we'll have macroeconomic policies that will move this nation forward in the name of Jesus. At the micro level, we are praying for wisdom and understanding to be able to navigate this current economic situation and come out strong and thriving in the name of Jesus. Thank you for hearing our prayers. Glory, honor to your name, Lord. In Jesus' mighty name we are praying. And the people of God will say better.